Do you know what Jimmy Kimmel, Huey Lewis, Rockefeller, and Big Browns all have in common? Are you interested to hear when the best time is to catch big browns on the South Fork of the Snake River? And are you ready for the history and story behind why our guest left his Bahamas lodge behind for the inland waters of Eastern Idaho? We unveil all the secrets today on Traveled. This is Traveled, where we take a deep dive into the specific region of the country so you have a better feel for what it takes to put together a trip and how you can better prepare for this big adventure. Hey, I'm Dave, host of Traveled and the Wet Fly Swing podcast, and I have been fishing most of my life. I grew up around a fly shop, and I have been loving traveling ever since. There's nothing better than getting on the water, getting in the truck, getting on a boat, and going for it. Oliver White is here to take us into the South Fork Lodge, one of the most iconic lodges in the West. Oliver is going to take us into putting together a trip to the lodge, and he's going to dig in deep into the seasons, the type of fishing we're going to be doing, and as we start to build our trip heading out to the South Fork again, this time through the South Fork Lodge. Plus, you're going to find out some insight into Oliver's business partner, Jimmy Kimmel, why Huey Lewis only fishes dry flies, and the story of Rockefeller building this amazing lodge, something that was quite unusual at the time. This episode of Travel is presented by Yellowstone Teton territory, where you can explore great fishing, hunting, hot springs, winter sports, and much more throughout the year. Okay, let's jump into it and see where that road less traveled is going to take us today. Oliver White from southforklodge.com. How you doing, Oliver?
I'm doing great, Dave. Thanks so much for having me back.
Yeah, thanks for coming on here. We, it's we got to go back into the Wayback Machine to look at the last episode. It seems episode 69. We'll have a link in the show notes to that one. We talked about bonefish, and I think that was a different time in your life when you were kind of in another area. Now you've got the South Fork Lodge, a famous lodge out in Idaho, South Fork of the Snake. So we're going to be talking about that today. Before we jump into some on fishing in the lodge, maybe talk about what you've been doing since the last episode we did a few years back.
Yeah, I guess it's been quite a, from the outside, a big life transition, but I was involved in the Bahamas for more than 15 or 16 years. And ultimately during COVID, let those businesses go and acquired South Fork Lodge in Swan Valley, Idaho. And it might seem like a big disconnect, but I started my guiding career in Jackson Hole. When I graduated college, I'd moved out to Jackson and was guiding trout, and then went down to Argentina to guide, and did that for a bunch of years before moving to the Bahamas. And even all those years in the Bahamas, I was coming back to Jackson in the summer. So it's actually a place that's been really close and integral in my life. And not only was it a great business opportunity, but it's a great experience. It's nice to be domestic. And from a life perspective, I have two little boys now, and it's a wonderful place to raise a family.
That's right. And where is, for those that aren't aware, where is the South Fork Lodge? What's the nearest town?
Yeah, so we're about an hour west of Jackson Hole, Wyoming, in Idaho, and headed the other direction. Idaho Falls would be the next closest airport.
Nice. And we've been doing a ton of episodes out in that area. It's just it's one of those famous areas from the Henry's Fork, the South Fork of the Snake, which are on all these, kind of famous waters and people up in the area. What is it about, why did you, when you made that decision, the South Fork, why was it the South Fork? Why was it not any other great lodge in the country?
Part of that is driven by opportunity, right? The South Fork Lodge happened to be for sale. But if you were to pick one river that you were kind of banished to for eternity, the South Fork is a good one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's, we're at a high elevation, so this is the headwaters for a lot of things. At the same time, it's a tailwater. So, it's behind a reservoir. So we never have the hoot owl or warm water restrictions that you see in Montana. That's never happened. So if you think of the impact of climate change and cold water fisheries, and hate to be a naysayer, but, cold water fisheries are in peril, this will be one of the last holdouts, right? We have cold water year round. I mean, I'm sitting here now, we're getting snowed on in March. We've had 70 inches of snow this month.
Wow.
And so, that creates a really, really healthy environment, and it makes it really stable. And even with, the potential runoff of a big snow year, the fact you're below a dam kind of controls so much of that we really have very little blowout risk, from runoff or anything. And so we have great early season fishing, great core of the summer fishing, and then it continues on into the fall. Next week we're expecting some temperatures in the 40s, and we've got a couple trips going out.
There you go. There you go. Awesome. So yeah, I mean, the trip, we are planning this trip and an event around it to actually, typically we'll do a giveaway, we'll launch this thing, and then we'll get a few people that are interested in coming out and basically paying for a spot. So I want to paint the picture of what that looks like. So if we were coming out in the springtime, and right now it's good because it's right as we talk, it's early March. Maybe describe that. When does your season start, like full on, and when are good times? I'm guessing hatches are a big part of why people love to come there.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of what makes the South Fork great is the prolific insect life that is there. And our fishing really gets going strong in May. We'll start to get kind of completely booked in May, and then we'll stay full all the way towards the end of October. And that spring fishing is kind of some of my favorite. You often think of kind of May as kind of runoff time, just because of our elevation. Our runoff typically doesn't come towards the end of June, so that preseason, that spring fishing could be some of the most productive of the year. You're talking kind of late May, early June, because you are ahead of runoff, so the river's really, really clear still, and the water's typically low. Everything's been rested all winter, and it's a fantastic time to go out and really chase big fish and kind of work on your techniques. The only potential downside of that is the dry fly fishing is not as prolific as the South Fork is known for, which kind of kicks off really with our salmon flies, which often is kind of around, July 4th. You got to think about that.
Gotcha. So how would that work with so you've obviously got the runoff thing. So if you planned a trip, let's say, we planned something in July, we wanted to hit the salmon flies, but it blows out. Or does that happen, or does it actually blow out, or just the conditions change a bit?
It doesn't necessarily blow out, but the water quality and turbidity can change, which impacts the quality of the dry fly fishing. The fishing will always be good. It's just a question of how you're going to get them. So, and typically part of the way the salmon fly life cycle works is nature has timed that to come after the runoff as these fish are coming out of winter to give them a huge meal to gorge themselves for, right? So that is part of the nature. So oftentimes, and not just on the South Fork, I mean, the Hoback, for example, over in Wyoming, which flows into the Snake, is another really great salmon fly fishery. And often the salmon flies are in full force when that river is in full nuke,
Oh, right. Really?
runoff. And the fish are still they're just eating the nymphs. They're happy. It's
God.
fine. But it might impact the way you catch them.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember one time we floated, the Deschutes was running at like 10,000 CFS. It was just raging, and we were like, well, we already had the trip planned, so we just hopped in and did it anyways. And we were catching fish right on the edges. Those fish were tucked right up against the bank, and they were still eating bugs, right? So they're still out there doing it even with higher flows.
Oh, no doubt. And the South Fork is amazing in that sense. Like our winter flows right now are just under 1,000 CFS, and we will fish it as high as 20,000
Oh my
CFS. And
God.
so
Wow.
it's this incredibly dynamic river with all these braids. And so one of the reasons if you're going to pick one river is it is different rivers based on the flow. And there's really nothing scary between 1,000 and 20,000. You get above that, and it starts to get a little bit sketchy. But
Yeah.
that's a big, giant range to fish the same drainage.
That's huge. So I think let's describe that early part of the season. And if we were planning a trip, I know you guys are fully booked up, but if we were shooting for May and we had a slot there, I'm just guessing kind of, if you throw a dart on the board, what would be just kind of mid-May, early May? Does it matter anytime in May?
Really all of that is pretty much water's going to be consistent. It's just weather, right? And so like if you push towards the end of May, that gives you a little more cushion for just the weather. And we stay really full, but we'll always make room for good folks. And I love that early season fishing because you are beating the crowds, right? Just like everywhere, man, these rivers see a lot of people. That late May fishing, you're not going to see a lot of people on the river. And it's probably one of the best times of year to catch a big brown trout, right? I mean, we catch some of our biggest fish of the year every early season. And so I really love getting out there and doing that. And the river is kind of at a pre-runoff flow, right? So it's also very obtainable to kind of introduce somebody to Western drift boat fishing.
Yeah. And that is that. So we're going to be floating each day, there's different segments, right, in the river. Do you guys cover, talk about that? What sections do you guys cover when you're floating?
Yeah, so the South Fork is a 65-mile tailwater, and then it joins with the Henry's Fork. It becomes the main stake, and we will fish the whole thing. And there are man, almost infinite floats between various put-ins and takeouts, but the river's kind of divided into five sections, from the dam down to the canyon to the lower canyon, and then you have two sections down in kind of lower, flatter land. But even within those sections, so there's multiple put-ins and takeouts. So every day we're going to put you on a different section of river, so you're seeing something different. So you not only get a diverse fishing experience, but you're also going to get a geographically different experience because floating through the canyon is, beautiful and scenic. And then you can kind of go in the lower river where it's, flat and really brady with a lot of down timber and structure. Very, very different experience.
Yeah, and typically when we do these things, we've been trying to do kind of a 3 days fully guided, 4 nights, just to make it, kind of decrease the cost a little bit so more people can get involved. But I mean, is that something we could do, or is this something where most people are going there for a week on a trip?
Our average trip is just that 4 nights or 3 days, or even a 3 night, 2 day trip. It's so easy to get in and out of here that we typically get people for just 2 or 3 days. It's really unusual for somebody to stay for a whole week.
Oh, good. Okay. So if that was the case, and let's just paint that picture a little bit. So, and typically we might be coming in on a Sunday, meeting up, hanging out at the lodge. So let's talk about that. We're going to get into the fishing fully, but let's bring it back to the lodge because I know it's pretty amazing. And you've got the bar and where it's at on the river, and there's this amazing sight channel. Describe that. What is the lodge? If we were walking up there today, and setting up to hang out for a few days, what would that look like?
Honestly, that's one of the things that we put a lot of emphasis on that makes us different than anybody else. It is a really incredible hospitality experience. We have a great chef. We do great food. We have a killer bar called the Machete Bar I'm a bourbon drinker, so we've got a great bourbon selection. We're right on the banks of the river. We have a pond on property full of fish. We're right there on a little side channel. You can go off and fish on your own. We have a couple fire pits right on the river, but it is really meant to feel like a really high-end home, but it's not stuffy at all. I mean, we want people to be really comfortable. You can put your feet on the couch and you can walk around barefoot and have a great time, and really, really unwind with a really luxury experience.
Yeah, that's it. And the cabins you guys have, those are the A-frame cabins. Is that you guys there right on the river?
Yeah, we really have three types of rooms. So last year I built a handful of A-frames right along the river. They're all 3 bedroom, 2 bath, kind of 2,000 square feet. One of them is where I live, and then the rest are kind of available as part of the lodge. There's 8 rooms in the main lodge itself, and then we have two other log cabin structures that were built to be hotel style rooms that each have 5 rooms in them. So we have a really large capacity. I mean, we really can kind of sleep 40 people.
Gotcha. And so, and this is all awesome. And do you know, like, what is the a little bit of the history of that lodge? I'm assuming there's a few owners maybe that have been through there, but how long has that place been going?
Yeah, it's kind of been a legacy on the South Fork. The original South Fork Lodge opened in a different location in 1939, and then it was bought by the Warner family, Buell and Spence Warner, in 1949, and that family had it until the late 90s. And it had been a lot of things, man. It had been like a campground, it had been a fishing lodge, it had been a biker bar, and it was on a different location, actually on the other side of the river. And when the state put the highway across, they took that land with eminent domain and swapped it
Oh,
for its current location. And that happened in the 70s. And then Mark Rockefeller bought it in the late 90s and built the infrastructure that is the South Fork Lodge today. And that is part of why it's so amazing, is because Mark made this incredible investment in the late 90s that really probably didn't make financial sense, and built this beautiful, giant, high-end lodge. And then we picked it up during COVID and have done a big renovation, some expansion from there.
that's it. Wow, that's really cool. And Rockefeller is the same. He owns the Henry's Fork Angler, right?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So he's been. I mean, he's a big. Do you know him? Is he still a big angler out there? Do you see him? Is he fishing out there still?
Mark is a very passionate angler. He has a ranch on the river still, and I mean, he's a big supporter of conservation, as his family always has been.
That's great. Nice, and this is awesome. So I think the painting that picture of what this lodge is going to be like is awesome, and we probably will have 6 or 8 people that are coming in. So it sounds like we could probably in a couple of those cabins, basically have everybody hanging out right together. And in the lodge, the same sort of thing. Are most people in the evenings coming down, maybe getting a drink, hanging out, talking fishing at the lodge?
Yeah, it's a really communal atmosphere, right? The guides come and hang out in the bar, after fishing, and tell stories. And so part of the appeal of being at a fishing lodge is that ability to interact with other like-minded people. And so it is a very communal feel. Most people are not going back to their room per se as much as they're staying and just hanging out and interacting.
That's right. That's right. This is really cool. And then the fireside chats, of course, right? You've got the campfire out back. That's going to be an option as well.
Fire it just brings people in, and even when we were in the Bahamas, man, we would do a fire every night, and it's such a great way to cap off the evening and get people to really unwind, and that cowboy TV kind of brings people back to nature in a way that I feel is really important and offers a really great experience. So yeah, we have fires every night, all the time.
Yeah, we did that. We did a trip with Jeff Liskey, our first steelhead school we did out on the Great Lakes. And we sat around the last night. I had the microphone and I just passed it around to everybody. And I said, hey, what did this trip mean to you? What was this like? And everybody kind of took a few minutes and chatted about it. It was really cool because you really heard why people were coming to do these trips. It's about the connection. And you know what I mean? It is about the fishing, that's obviously why we come, but it's everything else. And that's why I think what you have is so unique and why you're probably booked up, way in advance is that the experience you're trying to get is just that thing that's more than fishing. It's just about, experiencing that whole thing.
Yeah, there's no doubt, man. The language I use as I train my staff is, it doesn't really matter whatever we charge for our trips, man. The most valuable thing anybody ever gives us is their time. So, man, we put a lot of energy into the whole experience, from kind of the moment you arrive and start that decompression to getting out in the water and maximizing that experience and that fishing. And then, but also kind of closing it, when the fishing is really great, man, people will eat peanut butter jelly and not complain. But, if
right.
you have incredible fishing and then come back to, a great bar and great food and great ambiance and great people, right, that really rounds out a spectacular experience. And so we work really hard on the whole thing.
This year, I ventured into the heart of Eastern Idaho's Yellowstone Teton territory where the fish were larger than life and the waters held the secrets of the best fly fishing out west. With crystal clear rivers like the Henry's Fork and the South Fork of the Snake and enough lakes to keep you going all year long, make your way to Yellowstone Teton territory and embark on a journey to one of North America's finest fly fishing destinations. It's time to experience Eastern Idaho for yourself and support this podcast at the same time. Well, let's jump back into the fishing a little bit. So if let's say we're coming in Sunday, we're hanging out Sunday night, we're getting ready the next day is our first day. How does that look? Well, take us there. Are folks getting up early in the morning and getting their guides? How does all of that look?
Yeah, honestly, this is a pretty country club river. So, we're often meeting our guests at 8:30 or 9. There might not be a reason to get up too early. Sometimes getting a little sun on the water can be really helpful. And so, get up, have a leisurely breakfast, have some coffee, meet your guide. We've got an incredible fly shop. Go out there, pick out your bugs for the day, and then you're going to jump in the truck and head to the river. And, we're about 15 miles from the dam. And like we said, it's a 65-mile river. So, your put in might be as close as 2 minutes or might be on the furthest drive, about a 45-minute drive. And we'll get you moving. And with a group of that size, we would try to keep everybody on the same section. So even if you had 8 guys and 4 boats, we'd put everybody on one section. So you'd be on the same section together. So you could have lunch together and hang out. And then the next day you'd fish a different section. And the third day fish you had a different section. But still, you could swap boats and have lunch together and do that type of thing.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you stay together. So basically, if you did 3 days, you could hit the canyon and then hit the 2 other sections lower down or something like that, and basically stay together the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Okay. And then let's just jump on. And think about this. If we were the day one, I always think the canyon, that might be cool to start at the top. Is the canyon at the top? Is that where the canyon is?
The canyon is certainly the highest demand. A mix of that is the fishing is great, but it's also, just beautiful. And so it all depends. It really depends on people's ability. Sometimes maybe if you've got a group of beginners, maybe we're not going to start in the canyon. Maybe we're going to kind of put in a day cushion or 2 days cushion to kind of build up their skills a little bit and finish there. But those are the dialogues that we have every day of just like how to put people in the right experience for their whole trip and making sure they're seeing different things and building their skills so that they're kind of moving in the direction of being able to execute and have a wonderful experience and catch a couple of really memorable fish.
Yeah, gotcha. So it'd be more of, and that's cool. It could be kind of a little bit of a game time decision, like before, I guess we're probably planning beforehand, but let's just say we start lower down. So let's just say we have a few people that are kind of new to it. maybe we're starting in one of the lower sections. How does that look? You put in your boat. Are we fishing the whole day out of the boat? Are we casting to the bank? Are we getting out and fishing? How does that look?
Yep, the South Fork, is a big river and there's lots of braids. So your day will start and end in a drift boat. And there's a lot of, casting towards the bank, and there's a lot of kind of fishing inside out where, we're going to put the bait on the inside corner and kind of fish back towards that, that little run that's created there. That time of year, the water's low. We often can get out and wade up side channels, or, get out and swing flies and riffles and do things like that. So it is a dynamic fishery, and that dialogue is a big part of what are you looking for your trip, what's your experience level, and the guides are there to kind of make it happen for you. And if you love to wade, we'll get out of the boat more. If you're not able to wade and you got to stay in the boat the whole time, that's fine too. We can do it all.
You got it all. That's great. And I just talked to somebody yesterday. We're putting together kind of our Eastern trout school, and we're getting into the Shenandoahs to fish for brook trout and stuff. And then the one guy, he was like, man, I'm 78. What's this going to look like for me getting up and around? Am I going to be able to do this? And I was kind of like, well, yeah, we'll have to look at that, right? So, but for you, this operation, right? I mean, pretty much anybody, you could take anybody down the river, big or small, or any sort of level of age, right? Is that the case? And they just stay in the boat and fish?
Absolutely, man. I mean, we, I take my boy at 6 and 3. My 2 little boys go out in the drift boat all the time, and we have several clients in their 90s still fishing hard. So that's a big range.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay. And when we're on, again, taking it back to May, let's just say we're in later May and we're fishing. What does that typically look like? Are we doing a lot of dry dropper? I guess it depends on what's going on, but maybe paint that picture of that first day on the water. Are we kind of experience? I guess your guides are already knowing what's going on out there, but how might that look if you had to estimate it ahead of time?
Yeah, that pre-runoff fishing is going to be primarily subsurface. So you're going to do a lot of indicator fishing, or streamer fishing if you're comfortable with that. We might be able to find some small dry flies in the riffles, depending on what's going on with the air temperature and water temperature. But it is a really good time to kind of nymph and find some big brown trout and work on really getting that clean drift from a drift boat, which is a really important skill for Western trout.
And you mentioned streamers. That's always a hot topic. It seems like that's one of those buzzwords, right? Could somebody come in here if they really wanted to get the streamers dialed? Could you guys get this dialed in for somebody to have a good opportunity on a big streamer or any streamer?
Yeah, no doubt, man. I mean, when you have, both the population of trout that we have and all the brown trout that are in the river, and they are predacious. We've got a couple guides that are streamer wizards, and happy to get you out there, especially whether you want to learn to streamer fish or something that you're already proficient at. It is a very productive way to fish.
That's awesome. Yeah. So this is good. So, and what does that look like? Maybe walk us through that a little bit on the streamers. Is this kind of the bigger the better on the fly? Or are they, same thing out of a boat, stripping streamers, or how does that look?
Yeah, most of it's going to be from the boat, whether you're fishing towards structure and really trying to get it in there. And, a couple of these guys have really varying techniques. I have one guy that particularly loves fishing his streamers like coming downstream, which is kind of counterintuitive to what a lot of people feel. And he does really well with that, kind of casting, 45 behind the boat and fishing back down, the argument that, wounded bait fish would be tumbling down the river. And he does really well. Whereas, another school of thought is, big fish never want bait swimming towards them. But one thing you also see on this river is that those brown trout will get in these riffles, these big long flats where the water, is 2 or 3 feet deep consistently, and bringing a streamer through that, particularly a bigger streamer, can really help move some big fish as well.
Okay. So, and it'll be something, let's typically, if you were fishing with streamers, could you fish one person streamers, one person nymphing, doing other things while you're in the boat, or is that open?
Oh, absolutely, man. And if one person wants to streamer fish, then we'll put them in the back of the boat. Typically, you don't want the guy in the front kind of thrashing the water, streamer fishing if the person behind them is dry fly fishing or even nymphing in. But yeah, if everyone wants to streamer fish or everybody, we'll make it happen.
Okay. So that would be a day on the water, and this would be typical. I'm guessing, 8:30 to 4, kind of a typical day. You're getting lunch in the middle, and then you get back to the lodge and have dinner around 5 or 6. Is that kind of how that looks?
Yeah, a little later. So, we're often, you're going to meet your guide somewhere kind of 8:39. You're typically going to get back kind of 4:30 to 5:30. Cocktails. We'll have a couple appetizers floating around, and then we typically do dinner at 7.
Oh, 7. Okay. And then we'll chat about the fishing on the day. And I guess that's the cool thing is you could chat about, see how things are going, and maybe if you want to mix it up, or maybe if you did streamers that day, I mean, again, I always go to this thing for me. If it was me, I'd be thinking, okay, streamers, I want to get a giant brown, and on a streamer, that would be kind of cool. If that was somebody's goal, again, it's always about expectations, but if somebody really wanted to get a big fish, are you fishing different areas? Are you doing different things, focusing on big fish, or are you just kind of doing the same game plan?
No, if you are really kind of looking for one of those trophy fish and you're willing to stay committed to it, then absolutely we change the game a little bit. The lower river in particular. So as you kind of move from the dam downriver, the density of fish slows down a little bit, but the quality of the brown trout in the lower river gets exceptional,
Oh,
right? So if
nice.
somebody is really looking, if you want to spend the day really just chasing big fish, man, we're going to go down low. We might even go to what we call the main snake, where the Henry's Fork and the South Fork join and open up. Like that's a great place, especially that time of year, to go and look for like some really big fish where you're really fishing for a couple fish for the day, but they're going to be studs. But that also takes a level of skill, that you want to set realistic expectations.
Yeah. Okay. So if somebody's listening now, and we'll put a link out at wetflyswing.com/South Fork Lodge where people can sign up and we can follow up with them if they're interested in this trip. But let's just say it is that, you have one person that's really interested in the streamers. He's got skills, he's done it before, and maybe hasn't done it on the South Fork. They're coming in. So then, yeah, we could focus them maybe lower down for a day, see how that goes. And again, if it goes well, maybe they go back or maybe they mix it up the next day. It sounds like this is pretty flexible. Do you guys find that people have to have this dialed in, a month in advance before the trip, or when do we have to have the schedule kind of ready to roll?
No, man, schedule's real time. And we do that kind of the night before. So that is very fluid because we're processing everything. You're processing weather, angler ability, angler desire, right? And we are there to pivot and kind of make it happen. So yeah, really, you just got to get the trip on the books, and then we will adjust all the other minute details in real time to make sure you get the best experience you can.
Perfect. Perfect. And we call, we talk about this as like our schools, and we have some clinics we're working on as well. But the school part for us is like what we're talking about. It's definitely a guided, focus. And a lot of people don't want necessarily like the education, sitting down in a classroom. But I think it sounds like that's something you could do here. What we've been doing is actually doing some online courses and putting these together. So I'm hoping that maybe we can get some of your guides maybe on for some short little courses, just to give people a way to give them, like, before they get on the water, they could watch these things. Like, here's your guide talking about the streamer fishing. Is that something you guys have thought about doing? Do you think that would work here if we did something simple like that?
I'm sure we could talk a couple guys in, right? Guides are a secretive bunch. They don't like to give away
Oh,
secrets
right.
too much.
Yeah, yeah.
But at the same time, part of being a great guide is elevating your client's skills. Like I can remember talking to my guys back in the Bahamas. They're like, "These guys are terrible." I was like, "Man, they've been here 7 times. If they're terrible now, it's your fault, right?" So,
Right.
so we do really work from a experienced guiding perspective of, the South Fork often fishes so well. What I encourage the guys to do is like, "Hey man, if you're really getting them, man, push your angler to do better," right? So like, "Hey
Right.
man, we've had a really great day. How about we practice that streamer fishing, right? You've never done that. Let's, while the fishing's really good and you're having a great day, man, push their limits a little bit." So man, the guides are trained to really help broaden people's skills so that they know how to depth, they know how to dry fly fish, they know how to streamer fish, they know how to swing flies. And so, I think it's really important to be a well-rounded angler like that. And part of the guide goal is to groom people in a way that they are getting better and better for a lifetime of fishing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's well put. I think that is the essence of, if you talk about a school being well-rounded, not just streamers, not just dries, but really everything. It sounds like your guys can take us on that journey. So this is good. Well, we're kind of talking about this trip. I think, as we work into it, we're going to have a few days out there. The final night is probably, going to be a fun one. I mean, what's the last day look like? So once we wrap things up, are people checking out kind of early on the final day and heading out? Are people fishing, sticking around? Is there an option to extend their stay if they wanted to, or maybe not in the cabin, but fish more in the area?
Yeah, absolutely. The answer is always yes, right? So, whatever people are looking to do, man, we can help facilitate and make it happen. And we do. Part of the great thing about this part of the world is not just the fishing that we are on, but if you're talking about a 2-hour radius, I mean, you have Yellowstone Park. You can go down and fish the green. I mean, you can go on fish the Wind River Reservation. I mean, there's so many things you can add on to go do kind of from this launching point. So if someone's looking for a great Western experience, man, this could be one stop of many, and you can segue them all together. Absolutely.
Okay, good. Yeah. And I think that we definitely talk to a lot of people who are, they're going to be traveling. This is a good time to get out early and maybe travel around the country. At this time of year, I guess the weather can always be up and down, but like you said, May is typically pretty decent. You can get some rain, but later in May, there's a good likelihood that the weather will be kind of in the 60s, kind of fair weather.
Yeah, I mean, you can expect, highs, in the 60s to even 70s, and it'll still be crisp, cool mornings. Everything will just be starting to get green. It's a beautiful time.
Good, good, good. Well, you mentioned Rockefeller. I wanted to check in on Jimmy Kimmel, who I think is part of this thing. Is he Jimmy Kimmel? Check it. Is he out there fishing? Does he get out a lot on the water? Or is he getting out a few times in the year?
Yeah, so Jimmy is my partner here at South Fork Lodge, and really it's the reason that it exists. And I think people really don't. It surprises them when they hear that Jimmy is a really serious angler. Like, this is his favorite thing, right? I mean, this isn't an investment where he thought he was going to go make a bunch of money, man. This is like his favorite thing. And so one of the things that I think makes South Fork Lodge so special is we really run this business as if it's Jimmy's second home. And he's there for, a month out of the year.
Oh,
right?
wow.
And then so he fishes really hard and he's there. And so we do a lot of things that are really catered to him and his needs that all the other guests benefit from. And like an example of that would be, like our coffee cups and our plates are made in America by hand in Arizona, because that's something that's important to Jimmy. But, that means a coffee cup cost a business $18. And like, if you're running a business, you would never spend that money but it feels really great. And it has the South Fork logo and it's made in America and they're awesome. But we do that because that's what Jimmy wants when he's there. And so the guests that come in and out, they really benefit from someone that has such a passion for this, that loves it and uses it, and then is willing to share it with everybody else.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, a lot of people probably don't even know that about Jimmy, right? That he's into that sort of stuff, right? Keeping it local. And we just did an episode with the Mississippi Valley Conservancy, because we're doing a trip out to the Driftless, and she was talking about the same thing, right? Keeping it local, buy your food locally, do whatever you can, because these little things do add up. They might not seem like it as we're in this, the climate's changing, but these little things do add up. Do you feel that that's true?
No, I think not only is it true, it's really important. And it's really important as a business owner to be a leader in that space. And I think what people don't understand is the effort it takes to do that. It sounds like it'd be really easy to shop local, but I mean, for example, we are getting all of our produce and as much of our protein local as possible. But that means we're spending a significant amount of time going from farm to farm to get various different things. And, it takes a lot of energy, both in there's no delivery mechanism. Right? I mean, you can order from a Cisco and they'll bring you stuff, right? That's the easy way out and often the cheaper way out. So if you really care and you're trying to support all these little local businesses, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of relationships, and you're often typically paying a premium to do so. But I think that the end product of doing that and the community involvement of doing that creates a superior experience.
Yeah, perfect. And on one more thing on Jimmy. So is he, without getting too personal, his fishing, does he love doing everything? Is he into streamers? Like, when he comes out, is he going to be fired up for a certain area, or what's his deal?
Huey Lewis is the one who got Jimmy into fishing.
Oh, nice.
And Huey lives up in Montana on the Bitterroot, and Huey is old school, dry or die, suffer through it no matter what. And Huey tries to convince Jimmy and all of his buddies to come that is the only way to fish. So I am constantly battling with the idea of being a well-rounded angler with them, because they will throw dry flies to the end of the earth.
Yeah, perfect. No, it's good. And we mentioned, I talked to this, or mentioned this to you a while back, but we actually did have Henry Winkler on the podcast. And that was a pretty epic episode, because, I'm sure Henry, and I think he's fished in your area, but, he just talked about you could just hear the passion. And we were doing this call, and it was just, he just loves it. It was really funny. I've told the story a number of times, but I asked him, I said, Henry, so you love fishing, you've done everything in your career, why not just retire and fish, and just fish every day? And he's like, man, why would I retire? I'm at the top of my game with Barry. I just won an Emmy. I'm literally on top of the world, right? And so I didn't even think about that, but right, he still loves, his acting. Like that's still the thing. Do you see Henry out there? Have you connected with him?
Oh yeah, the South Fork is one of the places that Henry fishes all the time. So we see him every summer. He actually doesn't stay with us, but he comes in and has dinner. And when we know Henry quite well, he's had the same fishing guide for a long, long time. So, and he's a passionate angler. And I think for me, what I extrapolate from that is the interesting people for me in the world are passionate people, right? And Henry's one of those, man. He is passionate about his craft and he loves what he does, and that then comes out in all the other aspects of his life, like fishing. And those are the people that I look to surround myself with, right? And it really doesn't matter what their passion is, man. But when people go all in on something, they generally are kind of interesting and thoughtful people. And that impacts all aspects of their lives.
There you go. And so we talked a little about, you mentioned the Wind River, and we're always thinking about, kind of the nonprofits to support. And you have a good one, IndyFly. Maybe we had an episode we did with I think it was the executive director a while back. We'll have a link to the show notes to that. But maybe talk about IndyFly. Are you still working pretty hard on that? And is that kind of, you're bringing stuff more locally around your area?
No, absolutely. IndyFly has long been one of my favorite little side projects. I'm still the chairman. We're doing really good work and making a really big push right now with our first domestic project on the Wind River Reservation in Wyoming, which is in driving range at South Fork. So absolutely, that is in full speed. We're in the middle of kind of building and constructing a lodge and offering that experience. And so you could easily add on a few days to go in the Wind River, and we can horseback you back into there on some tribal land and get to fish some unique things.
God, that's great. Yeah. So maybe give us a just high level kind of elevator summary of what that is going on there, because you kind of have the local indigenous folks and maybe just high level IndyFly is the idea being that you empower the local community, whether it's folks here or around the world, to actually take a lead and have their own businesses. Is that how that looks?
100%, right? The whole goal with IndyFly is the idea that indigenous people all over the world typically have this incredible asset of their land. And what they don't have are sustainable livelihoods based off of that. They often just sell the rights to use it or extract commodities from it, whatever it is. But our goal is to locate indigenous populations that have wonderful fishing, help them create a lodge that they fully own themselves, where they make 100% of the money, and you create these jobs for them. And the idea that if you can create sustainable livelihoods, they will become better conservationists. And we've seen that work all over the world now.
Yeah. So IndyFly, maybe describe one other place where you've actually implemented IndyFly around the world and kind of how that looks.
Yeah, the most successful IndyFly project was in Guyana, which is where the IndyFly was born. And that is in Rewo Village in the middle of the jungle. Man, that'd be a place we'd love to get you to. So we can take, wow, four or six anglers.
Count me in. This is amazing.
You're catching arapaima. So it's the world's largest freshwater fish with scales.
Yeah.
They jump like tarpon, fully indigenous owned. We employ almost 80% of the workforce of the village, and you've had multi-generational improvement in quality of life purely from fly fishing, catch and release. And that project now is 12 years old, and it's just been remarkably successful. I was just down there last year, and I took my wife and my little boy, and my wife had gone with me on the very first trip a dozen years ago. And so she was particularly astute in noticing the difference of improvement of life, right? Like, from the way they dressed and wearing shoes to the dental work to the way they communicated. There's water in the village now and satellite internet and just an overarching improvement from everyone, completely touched by taking a handful of people fly fishing a year. It's really been amazing.
Wow. This is great. Okay. So we'll have a link to that. And we do have a few episodes. We had one where we had the just really IndyFly, the executive director, and then we also had one where we went up and went onto the Wind Reservation. I'm trying to think, who is the name of one of the guides who's been up there leading the charge up there for a while?
Yeah, that's Johan Dupree. Johan's from South Africa, so he's the country director for Guyana for IndyFly, and he's been helping in the Wind River, and he also helped with a project that we worked on in Lesotho in Africa.
Oh, cool. And actually, in the other person I was thinking of here is episode 390, Wind River with Darren Calhoun.
Oh, yeah. So Darren is a really fascinating guy, and he's helped IndyFly from the periphery as well. But Darren has his own lodge up there called the Wind River Canyon. So Darren is a native guy, and he has the only permit to fish the Wind River Canyon, which arguably is the best trout fishing in the lower 48. So, and Darren's a fascinating guy.
There you go. Yeah, and the other one was episode 342, Indie Fly with Matt Schilling. That was the episode we talked just generally about Indie Fly.
Yeah, Matt Schilling's our executive director. He really is the heart and soul of IndyFly. It doesn't exist without him.
Awesome. So, I mean, you got that going. You got the lodge. It feels like you're back at home with the kids, which is amazing. How's it going with the kids? Are your kids, are they into the fishing? Are they out there like casting like tight loops and all that stuff? How does that look for them?
Not quite. They're still little. So, and I'm trying not to push too hard, but the boys love the outdoors. Wintertime, they're skiing. Summertime, they're fishing. Huck is 6 now. He's really proficient with his little spinning rod, and we'll take him out there and he can do that on his own. I've taken both boys. I mean, the nature of what I do, man, I still travel and fish all the time. So they've gone to the Seychelles. They've been to Alphonse.
Oh, wow.
I was hooking GTs and letting Huck pull on them. He's caught bonefish. He's been to the Bahamas.
Oh, yeah.
He went down to Guyana and peacock bass totally on his own, like throwing his little Zebco out there and catching peacock bass and piranha. So they're living pretty large.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so yeah, they're down. Regardless of whatever on the fly, they're traveling. That's already impacted their lives, I'm sure, right? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the fly fishing will come.
Yeah, same for me. With my girls, I got 2. They're a little bit older, but yeah, I never pressured them to get out. But we just get outdoors and do stuff, and they love that. And the fly, yeah, if it'll come, if it comes, and if not, it's all good. But good. Well, anything else on the trip itself, or just fishing? I know we didn't do a deep dive on the fishing stuff, but I think we talked about the experience. Anything we're missing here to paint the picture of what this is going to be like for people that want to get involved?
No, I think for most people, this is a trip where you can really just take the pressure off, right? You're going with people that really care. There's a few things you can't control, mainly the weather, but man, the fishing will be good. We'll maximize whatever is available. And, if you come to it with some ideas of what you're looking for, we're going to help you achieve those goals. And if you just come like, hey, man, I'm looking for a great time, we're good with that too. We don't have to overthink it. We can just go get you out there and have a great time as well.
Yeah, perfect. And that's kind of what we want. We want that like laid back atmosphere where people can just hang out. If they're struggling with this, whatever it is, they can get out there. Maybe it's practicing their casting, maybe it's getting, that dialed in or whatever it is. And typically, when people come in, do you talk to them? Does somebody talk to them before the trip to talk about expectations? Or is that something that you're doing kind of once they arrive and digging it in, having to meet up with their guide?
Yeah, a lot of that is real time, right? So, and it depends on how we're engaged with them in the process. So in the booking process, sometimes that's coming out and we're keeping notes and having it dialed in. Sometimes it's on check-in. Sometimes it's in the boat with the guide. I mean, we are constantly pivoting as we get new information. And oftentimes people don't know what they want until they've gotten a taste of something, right? So it might be they go out one day and be like, hey, that was really cool. I'd like to go dive into that a little deeper, and we'll make that happen.
Perfect. So I'm going to take it out of here really quick with our fun fact segment. I've got a few little, I'm going to get you thinking here. So this is putting you on the spot, but think of a fun fact that, something either about you, the South Fork Lodge, or maybe just something in general bigger about, fly fishing. If you have that, think about that as we go here. But this one is presented by, I wanted to highlight an episode, Patagonia. I was pretty happy to have on Yvon Chouinard on a recent episode. And we talked about, just him. I mean, I'm sure some of the stories about the conservation stuff. So he's always my kind of the guiding light when I think of, how we do things right. First for you, other than, we talked about Anyfly, but as far as conservation, are there any groups out there who you would recommend we'd want to check in with and maybe support?
There's a lot of good work out there and all of it's important. So I'd hate to neglect anyone, but a couple that I have long supported and I'm always a fan of that might not be fly fishing centric, right? So the Teddy Roosevelt Conservation Partnership does really, really good work. And I think it might not be on the radar of a lot of fly anglers. I mean, the obvious ones for the fly anglers, are always there, man. The Travel Limited, the Boat Harbor Trust, these guys do great work. But TRCP does a much higher level of work across like all disciplines, where they're doing hunting and fishing, but they're particularly lobbying in DC, trying to move the needle for like high level legislation. So that's a group I've always really, really enjoyed. American Rivers, same thing. They do have they have an angling division, but they not only do really good work on protecting rivers, but they communicate in a really clear way of like how much money it takes to save a mile of river. And those guys do really good work as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I love American Rivers. And they're, of course, helping to, part of it is just, removing like some of the dams, which is interesting because if you look at the American West, dams, and you guys are in the Columbia system, right? So I'm not sure how many large dams are throughout there, including Hell's Canyon right downstream a ways, which I'm sure probably doesn't affect you guys too much because I'm guessing, well, you have American Falls, right? So steelhead and those fish couldn't get up to your area historically, right?
Correct. Yeah. The dams are really, in our position, dams are particularly unique, right? Because our fishery exists because of a dam. At the same time, I'm a huge advocate for removing dams, particularly where those dams are impacting anadromous fish, right? So when you're impacting the migration of fish, particularly from the ocean into the river, that is where they really, really have the most impact. And you're correct. Like there's big movement right now to remove 5 dams on the lower Snake River, which is ultimately the same water that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's a huge system. Cool. And that's part of the thing I think is unique for those that don't know this area, why it'd be so cool to be out there and, essentially kind of the headwaters, right, of the Snake River. You're way up at the top. But so let's do our quick little fun fact segment. So first of all, do you have one, anything comes to mind about, you yourself, anything that people don't know about or your business or the lodge?
And it's infinite, but you just mentioned Yvonne, and Yvonne is obviously an icon and one of my heroes. And I've interacted with him a few times over the years. And one of those was when I first built my first lodge in the Bahamas. Yvonne was the first client to show up.
Oh, wow.
And with a group of people. And man, I had just poured my heart and soul and sweat and blood into this project. And I was, really proud of it and really excited. And I'm walking around with Yvonne, and he totally destroyed me because I used the wrong light bulbs and I didn't do this
nice.
and I didn't do that. And I'm like, it was both like so frustrating and so enlightening
amazing.
of just his a constant awareness and that it really helped plant that seed and push you to always kind of be aware and dig in and kind of take that next level of analysis. But I'll never forget that of just walking around of this new project I had, with one of my heroes, and he really just pointed out all the mistakes I'd made and all the flaws.
He did that to me too. I was making the comment. I just mentioned the R2 fleece, which I love and I've been wearing, and I had it on in the call. And the only thing he said was like, "Do you know how many microfibers from fleece get into the system, the water supply?" And he was like, "Hey, we're working on a new washing machine with Samsung that takes out 99% of those microfibers, right?" And so that's where he's always he will always be there, right? That's just where he is.
No, he's an amazing person. One of the books I recommend to people all the time is his, Let My People Go Surfing. I just love that story and perspective of being a business owner and what it means and making hard decisions.
Perfect. Well, one thing before we take it out of here, Oliver, I want to just, and this is maybe a little bit of a harder question just came to my mind, but you had, I think with the lodge, wasn't there a hurricane or something that got destroyed? Maybe can you tell us what happened there and what that felt like to be involved in that whole thing?
Yeah, that's honestly a big part of my exit of the Bahamas. That was a really challenging thing. So, built Abaco Lodge in kind of 2008, and in 2019, it was completely wiped off the map in Hurricane Dorian. Lost a couple staff members during the storm. And Abaco also really changed at that time, right? Like the whole island was decimated, and it has now been rebuilt, without my involvement, and is going again. I haven't set foot on it or looked at it. I don't have really any opinion there, but that was a particularly challenging thing to deal with, putting so much energy into making something so good. Literally right before Abaco had gotten destroyed, it was named one of the top 10 fishing lodges in the world, and then just disappeared.
God. So did it pretty much just level the whole, or they restarted from scratch?
Yep. Yeah, man, it's ground zero, redo it.
God.
Yeah.
That brings me back to that. I was thinking the Flip Powell. It's been a while, but again, we had him on a long while back, and he described that situation where he was in his home, right, and he stayed. The home was getting destroyed around him, but he stayed because he didn't want to leave it. And then he had the story of Lefty Cray coming up where nobody else could get out to him. Right, he made it out with a bag of cash to give Flip. Have you heard that story?
Oh yeah, Flip. I was just with Flip last weekend. We were really close, but that was Hurricane Andrew. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Flip
Andrew.
Lost everything in that storm, and it prompted him moving because he was living in Homestead, Florida then, and he moved further north to get away from the hurricanes after that.
God, yeah, so much. Cool. Well, this is what's cool about talking to you, Oliver, is that you've obviously got a ton of connections with the fly fishing and kind of all the big names out there, and you yourself are obviously a big name. But tell me this on the bourbon. I'm interested because I'm not a big drinker of the hard alcohol, although I probably will partake when we get up there. Give me one bourbon. If somebody's going to go pick up a really good bourbon and have a drink, what would that be?
I think part of bourbon is the chase. Like you can't find it anymore. It's not even that it's expensive. It's right. So one of my favorites, for example, would just be Weller, which is like a $30-$40 bottle. but it doesn't exist, right? So you just have to, it's like chasing ghosts all the time of just trying to find it because the demand is so high for these products. But I do, and that's part of the appeal is just the pursuit as much of any, it's just like fishing.
The pursuit. Cool. All right, Oliver, I think we'll leave it there. We'll send everybody out to southforklodge.com or I guess on Instagram. Tell us again, what's your Instagram?
Oliver White Fishing.
Perfect. All right. Great, Oliver. Well, this is going to be awesome. I'm excited for this trip and definitely we'll be in touch as we kind of move ahead and definitely appreciate all your time and all the good work you're doing. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Look forward to showing you guys the West.
Whoa. There we go. Love talking to Oliver. He's always leading the way with his vision and his fishing. So it's great to catch up today. Please check in with our new school events and courses anytime. We've got one going most of the year right now at wetflyswing.com/giveaway. And if you want to jump on an upcoming trip, potentially this one, you could check us out anytime. Thanks for checking in today when traveled, and I hope you can experience that dream trip this year, or maybe just that trip in your backyard. And I hope you experience and enjoy that road less traveled.